I'm Marie Cummings. I'm a bookseller at Barnes & Noble, and I'm thrilled to be talking with the woman who inspired a generation to exclaim, "Oi, with the poodles already!" The Gilmore Girl herself, Lauren Graham. Hi, Lauren. How are you?
Hi. Hi. How are you?
I'm great. I was very excited about saying "Oi, with the poodles already" to you.
I understand. It's an exciting thing to say.
You know, everybody wants to say it the way that you say it. So, are you in New York?
I'm in New York. I got through the entirety of this past 2 years without getting COVID and then got it. So
Oh
I
no.
I am in my apartment. I mean, we were going to be virtual anyway. So yeah, but I'm in New York.
Oh, are you okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a real doozy, that COVID.
I thought I was a unicorn, but turns out not.
So, with you being in New York, does that mean that maybe you're going to be in that final season of Mrs. Maisel?
No, they have wrapped. I'm
Oh,
talking to Amy later tonight, and I can't wait to ask her a lot of questions about it, but I am not in it. Spoiler alert.
darn. Well, we'll miss you. Just enjoy it watching you.
Yes.
I just absolutely loved your essay, New York as a person, and how it appears as like a character in everything you write, but from like your novel, Someday, Maybe, to all of your personal essays. So it's so nice to be joining you from New York today.
I do think of New York as a person. It has helped raise me.
Yeah.
And it's a tough parent at times, but the way I relate to the city and the way I feel it affects me is just a big part of my life.
Yeah. And it just feels like everyone who has been touched by New York as a person has their own special New York story, and getting the chance to walk through your New York with you in your essay felt so nice because while maybe I haven't, walked those same streets that you walked through, I have memories of my own of saying like, "Oh, I want to go maybe a different way than I normally do today to experience a different part of my favorite parts of New York." It just
I
was so
think there's
nice.
always, in a strange way, a negotiation that's going
Yeah.
on, and you can take it very personally sometimes when
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to talk about is New York gives you these incredible encounters that can't be coincidental. They have to be personal to you. It has to be New York is
Yeah.
something. And then it really can challenge you on I used to feel that when I took the subway all the time, I would always be the person who would see somebody like spit or do something gross. And
Mm.
I'd look up and I was like, why am I the only person seeing this? Like, what
Yeah,
is the message here?
exactly.
And of course there is no message, but I would just feel like, okay, this is a sign of the kind of day I'm gonna have, or this means I need to think about why I ran into this person, or I don't know, I really do think of it very personally.
Yeah, I do too. When you're in New York, have you ever had a squirrel sign?
I mean, they're everywhere,
There's
but
so many of
I
them.
would I would probably more have pigeon signs,
Yeah.
but not as in as specific a way as I have had otherwise.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mentioned Someday, Maybe. I just loved your novel. It felt so special to me. I loved reading that story. And again, like New York was like its own person. You had Franny, you had Dan, you had Jane and James Franklin and New York. And I loved that
Well, what
you,
I'm working on now, which I've owed to the publisher for a very long time, but I'm very excited to get back to it, is it's a sort of sequel. The
Mhm.
book will come whenever it comes out, will be so far from Someday, Maybe that you won't have to have read that, but it's kind of the next chapter of it's Franny in LA, kind
Mhm.
of recently transplanted from New York. And obviously, I've written about myself enough that there are parallels in the real me and this character, but also not at all. And it's been transporting or whatever to also write about what show business was in the early 2000s. It
Yeah.
changed so much, with smartphones and social media, and but you will see a lot of those characters again.
Oh, I love that. I just love Franny so much, and Dan really took my heart away. I had read that you had adapted it for a screenplay. Is there any movement on that? Are we going to see it on the big screen anytime soon?
No, it was actually through Ellen DeGeneres' company
Mhm.
as a TV pilot, but it didn't go. But you never know. My friend
Yeah.
Jenny Han is making movies and TV shows from books from a
Oh,
while ago.
yeah.
So sometimes it's just not the time.
Yeah. I feel like with streaming, it could be a good time, for someday, maybe someday.
Mhm.
There's a lot of opportunities I feel like that we could see Franny's story.
Well, I always love watching the process of someone following a dream, that
Yeah.
is, especially the ones that really are true dreams, because so few people end up in these artistic careers. And I am just fascinated by what that struggle is. And I think almost it's become nostalgia now to see a character without a phone, without
Yeah.
that access, without text bubbles on the screen. And I think it's refreshing because there's a limit to storytelling that has to contain all of those things. I'm always depressed when I am watching a scene and 50% of the people are on a phone. It's just not dramatic. You're not seeing
Right.
someone's face. So who knows?
Well, speaking of storytelling, I love that you consider yourself a storyteller and that perspective that you have on what you do. You're not an actor who writes. You're not, a writer who acts. You're a storyteller and you're bringing all of these different stories to life through all of the different mediums that you tell stories. So, which medium is your favorite for telling stories?
Well, it's changing. I would say my work as a writer began not not out of frustration necessarily, but out of the intriguing possibility of being the sole storyteller
Yeah.
when I'd spent so many years as a really avid reader, as a person reading scripts, in some cases getting to play the characters in them. It just started to grow the idea of, I always say about, especially writing fiction, it's you get to play all the characters and not just one. I could imagine the next decade being more writing heavy.
Oh, that's so great. So, does your process change if you're writing fiction versus personal essays, or is it kind of the same?
I have been writing screenplays, so it's not that I'd gone away from fiction. It's a different challenge than an essay. An essay, especially in this book, because I had done it before, there's so many
Yeah.
things that I only did once. And then, like, I wrote a half-hour pilot, then I wrote an hour pilot, then I did a book. Like,
Yeah.
I moved around so much. So this was one of the first times I was like, this is a book of essays. I know how I do this. It will still be painful. I will
Yeah.
still really resist a lot of this process. But if I can get my chapter titles, I know what these themes are. I know what the beginning and even possibly the middle and end are. In fiction, the thing I'm always the most hamstrung by is what's the ticking clock? What's the urgency in a way?
Yes.
Because I love dialogue and, just two people chatting. That's doesn't make a book. And so in someday maybe I used what was a real concept at the time amongst many actors I knew, including myself, which is there is no time limit imposed upon wanting to do something like that. It's the
Hmm.
world telling you, it's when will you give up? It's almost like a terrible,
Yeah.
like, it's like that show Alone. It's it's like you don't know when the time to give up is. It's just when you can't take it anymore. So what people would do is say, okay, I'm giving myself 2 years, 3 years, 6 more months, or then I'm going to go to school, or then I'm going to
Hmm.
try a different career. And so that became the ticking clock. And what I'm trying to do here is, because even when you start working as an actor, there's still a ticking clock. And the ticking clock is, even if you get one job, your mind still tells you you'll never work again. So will you get too old? Will you age out of what people want to see you do? Will
Yeah.
the show get canceled? There's always something that is unknown that you're kind of living underneath. And so that's the new pressure in this book.
When you're writing, do you still follow the 1 hour thing that you outline in Talking as Fast as I Can? Like, is that what you set for yourself?
I haven't done that in a while. It's the kitchen timer method, which I think is 20-minute chunks. What I've have now, which I didn't have then, was a community of writers. And in two different cases, I have one writers group that meets virtually, because everybody's in a different city, and it's just starting, but it is sort of whatever each person wants to make it, in terms of, okay, by next time I want to turn in 20 pages for everybody to give me feedback on, or I'm not going to turn anything in because I don't do that, but I'm going to tell you that I did these pages, or I'm going to help you with your thing. It's just anything that's accountability. And then I have another group
Yeah.
where we just meet at a Mexican restaurant and just talk about what's going on. And then I get to be part of this other group where we meet and at somebody's house and we write and then chit chat for a long time. It's just anything to keep the train on the tracks,
Yeah.
and anything to have, to be like, how's it going for you? Oh yeah, me too. I find keeps you moving.
Yeah, because when you were talking about the kitchen timer thing, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds so hard to sit there and set the time, and you're not allowed to be on your phone. You're not allowed to just be like, I'm writing, and then just
Mm.
Google and go away." I was like, "That must be so hard. I wonder if she does that for every single time she writes. It's so regimented." But it
It's the
sounds like
easiest thing in the world, by the way. If you
really?
do it, yes,
Yeah.
because you don't have any other choices. And even if you can't stand 20 minutes, you can do 15. You can't believe what you can get done, because I think we've all lost track of how many times you pick up the phone, or how many
Yeah.
times. I have a few, but I'm a Luddite in this way, but I don't pick up my phone at the dinner table. And unless I'm like, dinner's over and I'm calling an Uber or something. And I
Yeah.
really try not to walk down the streets of New York on the phone. You can't believe what you see.
Yeah.
You give it up. You can't believe how much attention you can give something in just 15 or 20 minutes. And it's a relief to not have those other distractions. And the time goes by like that.
It must be so nice to be fully present and allow yourself to be fully present.
I think it's increasingly really hard to do. And we have to create it for ourselves. It's not going to, um, the world isn't going to get less technological.
Yeah, it's gonna be more connected,
Yeah.
which is rough.
Yeah.
In your essay, I feel bad about Nora Ephron's neck. Love that title. You say that you're a rereader of everything from J.D. Salinger to Nora Ephron to Carrie Fisher and Jane Austen. So, what are you rereading now?
Do I just reread Bridget Jones for the like fourth or fifth time, partially because I want the spirit of this book I'm working on to have, it's not anything specific, it's just the lightness
Yeah,
of contemplating where you are at a certain age and how culture is impacting you. And I thought, I mean, I love her books, but I thought, that's such a thing of a time, and such a particular age of thinking about being single versus being married. And my character's a little older, but so yeah, that's the most recent. It was really fun.
so when you're writing, you do read other books?
That was unusual in that I was reading something to jog kind of something I'm working on. Normally I don't read anything related to the kind of thing I'm doing. I do always have like a thriller, because I don't find that
Oh,
impacts
I love the
me.
yeah.
It's just for fun, and it doesn't, there's not a similar voice or plot kind of thing. And lately this is not in the rereading category, and this doesn't have to do with my books, but I've rediscovered Marian Keyes, the Irish writer, who I always loved, but she has this Walsh family series, which is like, I don't know how many books are in the series now. I think 5. But I love that. And that is something I'm trying to bring in, characters from another book, but you don't have to have read the other book. So I was just thinking about how she does that. And I love the tone of her work. It's funny, but there's always some real core issue happening. And so those have been fun.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. And you mentioned a thriller. Are you reading any thrillers right now? They are so
I
fun.
just finished the J.K. Rowling writing under a pen name.
Yeah, the
Galbraith,
Galbraith. Yeah,
Richard
yeah.
Galbraith. I just read that. It's like 900 pages. But those are characters I have become very attached to. So those are good. Read.
Those are good reads. But back to rereading, I want to talk about rewatching
Mm.
because Gilmore Girls is something that people come back to every year. I myself do. It's such a comfort. My friends and I are at a point where any small town will be compared to Stars Hollow just in conversation, or, we're all having children now and we're starting to think about what we want our relationships to be like with our children. And it's always like, I want to be as close as Lorelai and Rory. And I just wanted to ask you, like, how does it feel to have been part of something that is such a comfort to pretty much a generation?
It's extremely moving to me. I mean, it's really something I'm very proud of, something that was very unexpected.
Yeah.
And it's a constant discovery because it seems to be continuing. Like there was the generation who maybe grew up watching it and then their kids watched it. But I think we're almost at the next generation of those kids having kids, or, just hearing from family members who found it a bonding experience, or groups of women who've, grown up with it, or it's just really something that makes me very happy.
It's so lovely because it's not like a show that just like young people watch it and relate to. Anybody can watch it and relate to it. And even if like I watched it when I was younger and it very much meant something to me then because I identified so much with Rory. And then I watched it again and I could identify with Lorelai in so many ways. And then really my heart breaks for Emily in a way that it didn't when I was young because I was like, she is a mean grandma,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I think that's the richness of the writing too,
Yeah, it's so
because
lovely.
you certain things I think when you're young probably go over your head.
Mhm.
It's so dense and there's so much happening and so much cultural reference and just so much. And then as you get older, you see it differently. And
Yes.
but I really think it's like listening to a fantastic song. The music of that language is so catchy and so it just gets in your brain that I think it is like listening to a greatest hits.
Are there any stories like that for you? I know that you're a rereader, but are there any like other books or movies or shows that are like that comfort for you?
There's so many. I mean, I just watched Notting Hill the other day. I am, any romantic comedy. And then weirdly, the Godfather movies are movies that the one and two that I just find fascinating to watch and rewatch. I love Noah Baumbach's movies. I love Whit Stillman movies, which, were made that reflected a time when I was in college in New York City. And it's just so interesting to me to look at them now. I love the Philadelphia story, like the host of Katharine Hepburn movies. And I've probably seen All About Eve like 25 times. I just think it's well made, well acted, modern, incredible performances. So yeah, I've got a million of them.
I was just dying to know that. Thank you for sharing. I know you said, and have I told you this already, that you will not tell us if you're Team Jess or Team Logan or Team Dean. And I don't even want to know who you think the father is, but I just need to know if you're Team Jess or no one, because those are the only options to me. And I desperately want you to agree with me.
I cannot agree with you. I am bound by law I've signed an NDA in my mind that I cannot, I can't even weigh in at all. And also, it's not for me to
Yeah.
tell that story because what if it continued and I had said the wrong, what if it's the Wookiee?
Yeah. Oh no, the Wookiee.
So I take the fifth.
Those mind NDAs are the most binding
They're
of
real
all.
tough.
Yeah.
Get out of them.
Well, I had to ask. You
You
know
have
that
to
I
sue
had to ask.
yourself.
Yeah. Don't sue yourself, please. Okay, so off of Gilmore Girls now. Back to Have I Told You This Already? I have some really hard hitting questions for you. I hope you're ready for this. Have you redone your birth chart now that you have the correct birth time?
Yes.
Are you happy with it?
Yes, but it's not as fantastic as my fake birth chart
Oh,
when my
man.
father forgot the time I was born.
Sometimes will you just claim the fake birth chart because it is what your dad thought?
No, because as I say, none of that really sticks with me
Yeah.
anyway. It's just important in the moment. And I'm so suggestible too. Like if you tell me anything, I believe you. So it's tough for me to consult with the other world or psychics or whatever because I'm so impressed by someone who has the confidence to be like, yeah, your third moon is why you're, gonna get a dog or whatever. I'm like, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But I just do it and that's dangerous territory. So I like for fun to kind of dip my toe in that kind of thing, but I can't stay there too long.
I'm that same way. And actually, yesterday was my sister's birthday, and we were somewhere where she was getting a tattoo, but someone off to
Well,
the side was having their cards read. And desperately wanted to listen in, but then I was like, that seems too private and personal. But I also want to know what the cards say for you.
yeah. Well, I think that's the most fascinating part of it actually is somebody else telling you what it's, I have a friend who was like, I went to this psychic and she told me the exact day my husband and I, needed to whatever to conceive and it happened and like and I'm like, wow. Also I'm fascinated by the tattoo parlor slash tarot card emporium.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And at the same time as the tattoo, like that she was getting, someone else was doing like constellation freckle
Mm,
tattoos.
mm,
So it was a beautiful studio. It was just a very interesting experience to be
yeah.
part of, just even watching.
Well, the tattoo world is really different now. Like
Yeah.
it's not you don't have to get a huge it seems like most younger people have something.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. It's fun to get.
Yeah,
It just feels like another form of expression.
right.
But anyway, have you and your sister found a replacement store slash brunch spot to fill your Barney's New York hole in your heart?
No,
Oh
we really haven't.
no.
I mean, we'll always go for any Mexican food of any
Yeah.
description, but it doesn't have the vibe that, it sort of felt like it was our first kind of ladies who lunched
Yeah.
vibe. And the fact that you'd walk through the store to get there was part of the ritual. And honestly, I mean, that essay for me was about how strange it is to have outlived
Mhm.
something, in this case, an institution or, a store that
Yeah.
it didn't occur to me would ever not be there. And because I'd worked there and then shopped there and then gone there with my sister and it was another it's not quite as personal as New York as a person, but it is those kinds of things that frankly confront you with mortality. It can be the smallest thing, like your favorite local whatever closing, and you think, why, but it was always there, and now it's not.
Yeah.
And I, how can that be? And it's just reflective of what's going to happen to all of us.
Oh no.
I know, sorry. Woo!
You got morbid there, Lauren.
But I mean, that's kind of what it was. It's
Yeah.
like, no, don't go.
When you were working at Barney's, do you, because you apologize a couple of times for saying, like, sure, that outfit would be great in your law office. Do you have any specific outfits that stick out to you now that you were like, yeah, looks great for work?
Well, I talk about this, but there was a thing then that was popular of these antique looking blouses that were beautiful. I mean, the stuff in Barney's then, especially, was exquisite. It was just beautiful. But they were kind of see through. And I did not have any business, like, I didn't know anything about what went on in an office. The closest I got to an office was if I catered a lunch there as a waiter, but I didn't know, purposely lie to people. And I don't think it wasn't that I didn't care. It's that I was kind of learning on the job. Like I would look at other people and be like, what do they wear? What do they wear? Yeah, sure. I don't know. Like people really dressed for work. That's how it seemed to me. It was very that kind of Manhattan business look was really buttoned
Hmm.
up.
Oh, yeah. It's so much more relaxed now.
There were no casual Fridays. That was an invention in the last 30 years.
Yeah. Very nice to be able to wear jeans sometimes.
On the other hand, like I in an old lady Jackson way, when I go to the theater now, I'm like, what are people wearing? It's the theater. You just be
Yeah,
respectful, and like, get dressed up a little bit.
I agree with that. And also, speaking of Old Lady Jackson, I love her so much. I love her in both of your books where you talk about her. So, but was there any wisdom or advice that she left out that didn't make the cut in this essay?
Well, now, of course, I mean, I don't know that I'll have it off the top of my head, but I was collecting little pieces um, for a long time, and I did leave some out. And now I always think of them like, because it's little things, and I
Yeah,
think, you know, not to again be too macabre, but having not really grown up with my mom,
yeah.
it's the kind of thing that like your one's mom would maybe nag you about or tell you, or
Mhm.
like I can remember some of the things my mom said that were not designed to take up this much space in my brain, but because I wasn't with her all the time, like
Yeah.
when you're decorating a room, like always start with the rug, like the rug anchors the room. She was also, when I was a younger teen, she had things that nobody follows now, which she's like, the boy should call you first.
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
don't you don't call a boy first. So I don't know, just it's little things like, somebody I don't remember who told me this, but do you know if you load your dishwasher with all the utensils together, like the spoons
Yeah.
with the spoons, the forks with the forks, it makes unloading it like it takes 2 seconds. And I was like, that seems like a really overly tidy way to
Yeah.
do it. But if you do it that way, it actually makes life easier. I'm just fascinated by little tidbits like that.
I am too. And the sock thing made me laugh because I got new socks last week and then I just put them on the top of my sock drawer and then I was like, "No, Old Lady Jackson said, get rid of those old threadbare socks. Don't be precious about it."
Yeah. Well, it's again just little things in life that take up space in our brains, and like it's okay to replace your socks is, I think, an okay
Yeah, you don't
rule
need
to
to
live
be
by.
attached to those socks.
That's right. That's right.
Does Old Lady Jackson have any holiday advice?
Start earlier. This is what
Yeah.
I've learned hosting many a Thanksgiving. There's some idea I had that you have to do it all on the day, and you really don't. You can do most things one day ahead, and you can make a lot of the sides 2 days ahead. And then what I always have on hand is an extra pie crust in the freezer, because what I make for leftovers is turkey pot pie.
Oh, nice.
And so I just take everything that's left over, and you don't even have to, you can just mix turkey and like stuffing and
Yeah,
literally anything into enough of a like thick soup and pour it in the pie crust. It's really good.
that sounds delicious. You'll have to thank Old Lady Jackson for those tidbits for
Okay.
us. Also, have you eaten that marmalade yet that you
Oh,
made?
it's disgusting. It's in the back of my refrigerator still. That is an essay about the internet making us all feel like we have to be good at, or we could be good at so many things. And all you have to do is watch this YouTube video. Why aren't you good at making marmalade and knitting and whatever else you're torturing yourself about being good at? And I just tried to do this thing in sort of a breezy, I'm Ina Garten kind of way, and it just didn't go well. And instead of feeling bad about it, I was like, not doing that, forget it.
Yeah.
And I felt much better. But I do have a gluey marmalade in my fridge if anybody wants some.
At least you tried.
I mean, my point in that essay too is like, why try?
Yeah. But
Sometimes, like, why try?
I've never even thought of making marmalade before. That must be so hard.
Well, it's
And
the hazard of living in California where there's so many fruit trees, as I say, and the neighbors are like giving them away, and you're like, I must do something with this fruit.
what are you going to do with your next stock of oranges?
Not worry about
Not
them.
make, yeah,
The same thing, probably give them away
yeah, your
in
nice
the orange
plethora of
box in front of my
oranges.
house that says take one.
I love that. Thank you for answering those heavy hitting, hard hitting questions.
Appreciate
I
it.
know I was really tough on you about the
No.
marmalade, but I have to ask you if you do you really not care about belly buttons? Because in talking as fast as I can, you do say what the Japanese word for it was your first word.
Yes.
And no, you really don't care about it. But then shortly thereafter, you did talk about fuzzy navels, the drink.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I think that you might care about them just like a little bit.
It's just so funny because I said that during a time when no one picked things up and then like you lived with them forever. It was
Yeah.
just a total silly thing to say. But I do have affection for the fuzzy navel because it was the first alcoholic drink. I mean, think how gross that is.
Oh,
We
yeah.
drank so many of them too. After performing on stage, in the chorus, this was at Summerstock, and then we would do these like shed shows after. I don't know how anybody was alive. We lived on like pretzels and fuzzy navels and dreams.
Overall, what I love about your writing, whether it's your novel or your essays or even your lovely commencement speech, is that it feels very much like you're sharing stories and giving advice to a close friend. I felt close to you. So, besides generally not worrying about it, do you have any advice for aspiring storytellers?
I think it's you have to start with the idea that your story is important and then wonder in what way might it be important to someone else because they're equally valuable. Storytelling can just be you understanding yourself, but it's turns into something else when it's a shared piece in a way. And so much of anything in life is practice and just pure showing up. I can't believe from the time that in earnest, and it was an English major and I had to write as a younger person, but from the time I started to now, just by sheer doing of something, you can't help but get better at it. It doesn't matter if it's running or whatever it is. And that was kind of something late in life that there's a Buddhist saying that is there is no wasted effort. So that even if you don't whatever reach your intended goal, the sheer doing of something got
Hmm.
you somewhere different than where you started. And um, I think that's just important to remember. You're not always going to feel inspired or inspirational, or you're not going to feel you've done your best. And you just have to ignore that voice and keep going.
I love that. And as you continue writing and growing, do you revisit what you've written in the past? Is there anything that you were like, oh, I would like to continue telling that story? And you look at maybe something you wrote before and it's just, you're like, who is that person?
I'm always like, who's that
Yeah.
person? I mean,
Yeah.
these are like alien babies. I like look at something and it's sort of like when I am flipping through and see myself on television, it's very hard to reconcile that with today, and I think that's okay. I think because it's so weird. Why would you, one of my nieces saw me on something the other day and asked my stepmother how I got in the television.
Hmm.
She said, "How did Aunt Lala get in the television?" And that's her first
Yeah.
discovery of that. And how weird is that? Like, it's just these
Yeah.
things are strange, and you always grow from where you were. And the thing about being a published writer is it has to stop and get published. You'd
Yeah.
always go back and change it if you could, but it's a moment in time, just like me on a TV show was a moment in time.
Hmm.
So I don't go back. I will go back for just purely informational. I say in the book, but there there were a few times where I had to remember, had I told you this already
Yeah.
in the earlier book of essays, and for this novel, I mainly had to go back for what year was it, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But I don't watch myself, I don't read myself. I try to do the best I can, and then go on to the next thing.
Is it nice going back to Franny though?
It's really nice. It's really nice, and it's
I love her.
I'm so glad. That's That's so nice. Yeah, it's really fun just going back to that kind of storytelling
Yeah.
and to imagine, what has happened. Like, this is a few years later, and where is she, and what's going on with those other people, and
Mhm.
no, it's really fun.
I love the way that you ended it too. She's telling Dan about her day and then it's just over. And then I was like, "Oh no." So it's so nice to hear that you're picking it back up. It won't be from that conversation.
No,
Totally,
it
but
won't,
it's
and I feel bad
yeah.
about that because many people found that abrupt, and to me, it was more. I was trying to. That was so emblematic of the time
Yeah.
of picking up an answering machine and like just.
Yeah.
But I think that was a jarring way to end a story. There are more phones and but more completed conversations the
Yeah.
next.
I kind of loved it even though it was a little bit jarring because then I could imagine how Franny and Dan developed from there.
Well, and that was a little of my thought as well. I like, I mean, and maybe that's the years of working with Amy Palladino,
Yeah.
who still likes a little bit of a cliffhanger.
Uh-huh.
Is that I I think I just can't speak for her, but I think when you do want to let people imagine, what might have happened rather than give a pat ending, but it can go either
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Well, I do want to end this podcast on a cliffhanger. I need to ask, were those last four words a cliffhanger? Or
They were for sure, but
yeah.
I'm not sure, and I never really knew what if there was a plan. I think it was a
Mhm.
similar thing, which is keep the door
Yeah.
open because you never know because we didn't know,
Yeah.
and I just what's more satisfying and yet unsatisfying than letting you imagine for yourself what happens next.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
I wonder if, and I don't know, but if those characters are so alive for her that she can't put a bow on it, like
Mhm.
didn't want to,
Yeah.
I don't know that it was a business decision. I think it was
Yeah.
like they're suspended in time and space because that's where they live. They're never not there.
I rewatched A Year in the Life over the weekend. And I just loved it so much. It's so special. Luke and Lorelei's wedding was so beautiful. I cried the first time I watched it. I cried this time. Um, it just it had such a special place in my heart, and so I was so excited to get to talk to you. I'm so excited that I have all of your books here. Look at this. Read, read your books. I having spent this time with you has been so special. Your new book, have I told you this already? Is so nice. Again, it feels like sitting and talking with a friend and sharing stories. Thank you so much.
That's really, really kind. And I've enjoyed our talk, and thank you so much.
Hello, readers. It's time for another TBR Topoff. We're going to recommend some books to pick up when you stop in for your copy of Have I Told You This Already? I'm Mark, coming to you from my Barnes & Noble in Cincinnati.
And I'm Madison, coming to you from my Barnes & Noble in Indianapolis.
We've got a couple of great books to recommend today, Madison. I'm going to jump right in if that's all right.
Go ahead.
Excellent. So I thought about Lauren Graham. I thought about funny people. I thought about charm and wit and a little bit of whimsy. And it made me think of another funny, fantastic person, and that is Mindy Kaling. She is a very talented multi-hyphenate. I love her very much, and she's written a couple of essay collections. So I focused on one in particular called Why Not Me? This is a collection of stories about her living in the Hollywood life. So she touches on the struggles of being a brown girl in Hollywood. She talks about the weirdness of dating co-stars and actors in general. She talks about beauty standards and body standards and this sort of second coming of age that she had to face, basically coming into her own in a whole new way. It is all told with her trademark wit. She's fantastic because she is able to effortlessly combine twee with smarts. And it's just impressive to watch and very entertaining to read. I thought about her also because there's this growing pantheon of quote unquote funny ladies who are strong, who are independent, who are hilarious, and who are very, very smart. I think Lauren Graham, I think Tina Fey, I think Amy Poehler, Amy Schumer, and Mindy Kaling definitely deserves a place in the ranks of these wonderful women. So please, please check out Why Not Me by Mindy Kaling. Madyson, what do you have for us?
Love funny women.
Mm-hmm.
I went in a different direction. I pulled from Gilmore Girls because that was such a staple of my growing up, my childhood. The dynamic my mother and I wish we had. I don't think anyone can achieve the dynamic of Rory and Lorelai, no matter who tries.
Yeah.
But what we wish we had. And then also my fellow bookseller, Olivia, really, really recommends this book, especially if you are a Gilmore Girls fan. And that is One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle. So this book has a little bit of everything you'd want. It has that strong mother-daughter narrative that you see with Rory and Lorelai, but kind of set in an alternate universe, if you will. It's also very food heavy for all of those of us that love Luke's Diner. There's a little bit of that. And it has an opening quote from the last episode of Gilmore Girls. But I think what really drives this book home is that if you want to pair it with Lauren Graham's new book, you can, because this audiobook, especially if you'd rather listen to it instead of read it, is read by Lauren Graham. So I feel like that's an endorsement in and of itself. It is a fiction book, but you'll get that little slice of life if you're missing Gilmore Girls. It's been a long time since it's been on air. And you'll get funny women. That's the theme of this episode. Yes. Funny, smart women. That was One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle.
Fantastic. Such a great pick. And yes, funny women are the best, and funny, smart women even more so. Well, that is all we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Poured Over. Please make sure to give us a rating and subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can also follow us at Barnes & Noble. Pretty simple. I'm Mark. You can follow my home store at BN Westchester.
And I'm Madyson. You can follow my home store at BN River Crossing. Thanks
for tuning in, everybody. Happy reading. Bye. Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Poured Over is a Barnes & Noble production. To help other readers find us, please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.